So this week we're talking about the pre-writing. Anyway, now that all that sad shit's done with. Hi, my name is Elizabeth.
And I'm Steph, and welcome to the third episode of the podcast. I can't believe we've done 3 of these already.
That just is making me think of how many weeks I've been at school already at this point, and
the answer is too many.
Yes and no. But unfortunately, we have to open this podcast by giving you some bad news. Our tech person, the one who was recording these and editing them for us, Michael Shaw, he's dead. He's dead, Jim.
For those of you who don't know, the Writing Center had some pet velociraptors we've had for quite a few years. And one of Michael's jobs, besides editing podcasts, was Velociraptor Wrangler. And, well, over the weekend, he came in to take care of them. And he thought, hey, let me do some magic for them. Maybe they'll calm down and be real nice. And, well, turns out velociraptors don't like magic. And so he was unfortunately eaten. We'd like to take this time to remember Michael.
And read a eulogy for him.
Michael Shaw, or Shawshank Redemption, as people like to call him, was studying public relations and writing due to his love of both the communication and English worlds. After graduation, he hoped to work for a radio or television broadcasting company in Atlanta, or, in his words, make like J.K. Rowling and get his fiction published. He knew the MLA citation and AP style well, and had experience in APA. He will truly be missed.
Our student director, Amanda, has taken over his job as Velociraptor Wrangler, so since she has taken over, we have had 2 days without a Velociraptor incident. Rest in peace, Michael. Alright.
So this week, we will be talking about the writing process. This is the first in a series that we're going to do, and we're going to go through the entire writing process, go step by step to help you create the perfect paper. Trademark, copyright pending. Probably.
Yeah.
We'll work on it.
This isn't so much specifics focused. There's more like some helpful tips and tricks we've picked up along the way that'll work for pretty much any assignment that requires more than 1 page of writing that you run into. So this week we're starting off our series by talking about kind of the pre-writing, brainstorming, research stage, before you get into really writing your paper.
Yeah, we definitely recommend doing this step. I know a lot of people, and I was one of them, especially in high school, I didn't think I needed to really outline anything or really research anything unless it was in the prompt, I needed like 3 outside sources, then I'd be like, all right, to Google. But especially with college papers, you really need the pre-writing step.
Oh, you sweet summer child.
What?
Pre-writing was the one stage of the writing process that I was always like, no, you have to brainstorm and you have to outline, because then by the time you actually get to writing your paper, you don't actually have to think about anything. You have already done all of the thinking. You just have to put words together into a sentence.
Well, see, I've learned that now, but in high school I struggle bust my way through it. Here I am. I've learned from my mistakes. But the first step of the pre-writing process is understanding the actual prompt. Unfortunately, we don't have any specific prompts yet. That'll be another episode or a couple of episodes later on.
Potentially guest starring your favorite professors.
Or not favorite professors, that's your opinion.
Or really just whoever we can get to sit in the room with us.
Basically, whoever wants to be subject to this.
After they've listened to us interview Melissa.
Yeah, that might cut down our prospects.
Yeah.
Anyway, so understanding prompts. So what a prompt is your assignment. It's what you've been given. It'll include how many pages you're supposed to have, or how many words you're supposed to have, the font type, the font size, all that stuff, but also what you're actually supposed to be writing about. whether it has to do with the book that you've been reading or a subject you've been talking about. That's the prompt. So what really gets people, and what used to get me especially, but what I've seen when people come into the Writing Center, and I don't know, Elizabeth, if you've had the same trouble, is people don't know how to break down what's important in a prompt.
I realize I'm nodding my head along with this and not actually answering. But for the record, yes, I also have seen this. Sometimes not a lot of professors, but some professors make it easy for you and are like, when you're writing your paper, there are 4 questions you should be considering, or there are 3 questions you should be considering. So then you just kind of answer those 3 questions and mash them up together and look, it's a thesis. Sort of.
But sometimes those are hidden. I know a couple professors do question too, but a lot of them usually will have like a whole paragraph of stuff, and you're like, I don't know what's important in this or what I'm supposed to be actually writing about. So in order to find what's important, you have to keep in mind what you've been working on in class. So this also has to do with paying attention in class. Pay attention in class.
Don't skip class, kids.
Don't skip class. Unless you're
sick. Then skip class. Don't get me sick.
So focusing on remembering what you've been talking about, again, whether it's a book or a topic, and finding the points in the prompt on the paper, whether it's in the paragraph or the questions that your professor asks that have to do with what you've been talking about. And so they'll usually be like, I'm trying to think of like key phrases that professors use a lot.
Consider, usually?
Consider, yeah, is a good...
Consider, think about, be mindful towards. Usually what your professor wants you to write about is if you're given this paragraph of kind of setup for your paper, it's going to be within the last like 2 sentences. It's kind of... It's like the way you write an introduction to your paper. Your thesis is going to be in the last 2 sentences or so. Your professor's thesis for this prompt is going to be in the last 2 sentences or so.
Yeah. And I lost my train of thought. So looking for those main focus statements, I guess you could call them, or the thesis statement, in the paragraphs or in the prompt. What I've noticed mostly is professors will have like 2 paragraphs mainly. The first one will be like, hey, this is what we've been talking about in case you haven't been paying attention or in case you skipped class. Again, don't skip class. Pay attention. And then the second paragraph will be more about what they're looking for in the paper. And it might be interspersed with stuff like, we've been talking about this, or I have mentioned this. And it's like, well, you don't really have to keep that in mind necessarily depending on the prompt. It's more focused on like looking for things that I want you to do this or answer these questions. What do you think about this even? And that's what you really have to look for when looking at a prompt. And once you find that and find what's important, you can then focus on what you're writing about and getting your main topics down. And what I do normally in a prompt is I'll highlight or underline what I find important, and what I want to be focusing on, or like the questions that I want to answer. And that'll usually form my sort of rough outline, you could call it, and then I plug in all the information, the resources, the quotes that I will then use in my paper, which is a really nice segue then to brainstorming, which is the next step.
So this is kind of the stage of your paper where you're like, you might have the main topic your professor wants you to write about, but you're trying to figure out what stance you want to take on it is generally a big one, especially with rhetoric classes, or just kind of what more specifically from that you want to write about. And sometimes it's both. Sometimes people's prompts are really, really open, and you're like, okay.
Which can be good or bad.
Yeah. But so generally once you figure out what question your professor kind of wants you to answer, from there you kind of move to brainstorming and generating your subpoints and figuring out what you need to research once you've got those subpoints. So say the professor your question wants you to answer. No.
The professor your question wants you to answer.
The question your professor wants you to answer is, are cats better than dogs? The answer is yes. But also, You gotta
have to support that. You can't just turn that in for your paper. I wish it was that simple.
No,
but unfortunately,
you look at this question: are cats better than dogs? And you take you go with your first gut reaction, take a stance. Yes. Okay. So from there, you move that in kind of a question and answer format to okay, cats are better than dogs. Why? Because they don't jump on you up on you often like they do, but a cat's not going to be as big as your actual person jumping on you ever. This is time I need a new sample topic.
No, I like cats versus dogs. Keep going.
Okay. So that's one, and you can organize these points in a variety of formats. You could start outlining, okay, Roman numeral 1, cats are better than dogs. A, cats don't jump up on you with their full body weight, or they're smaller than dogs, so if they do, it's not gonna knock you over. 2, cats don't need as much attention as dogs do. You can just kind of leave them alone and they'll deal. 3, what's the third point?
Cats are stereotypically cleaner than dogs.
Cats are cleaner than dogs. They poop in a litter box. They're probably not going to poop in your house. They might throw up in your house, but that's weird. You need to go get that checked out.
That's what we'd call a qualifier that we'll talk about when we talk about conclusions.
Yes.
We're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves.
Yes. So what's a fourth point, since we don't want to write your basic ABC paragraph essay? What's a kind of point for the other side? What would something you could argue dogs are better than cats?
They're more loyal.
Probably true. They are more loyal.
You can do more things with them, like dogs will play fetch, you can take them for walks and all that fun stuff, whereas cats just kind of lay there. They're great. I love cats. Don't get me wrong.
I do in fact have 3 dogs. So but yeah, so stuff like that. So you've got these points. So you get these points all written out, and that's kind of the framework of your essay. It's your beginning outline. But then under these points, you have to come up with supporting evidence for this. So, this is where you kind of get more into the research, but you think of things you could possibly research, what's your average cat weigh versus what's your average dog weigh for how much it's going to knock you over when one jumps on you, or, what were my other points?
Cats are cleaner than dogs.
Cats are cleaner than dogs. How easy is it to litter box train a cat versus how easy is it to train a dog to, go right outside into the yard, or how often you have to walk a dog. Stuff like that. That's what you do in the brainstorming stage, is kind of, you take your big question and break it down into a lot more smaller questions that you answer with research.
Right. And then, so if we were doing something like this, comparing cats and dogs, this is also where you would focus on how to set up your essay and the organization of paragraph order.
Yeah.
Personally, the way I like to do comparison things, and I know some other people have different formats and ways they like to do it, I would do a introduction paragraph where I would set up, what I'm talking about and everything like that, the main idea of cats versus dogs. And then what I would do is I would start out with saying, my first main subpoint about cats, which is, what was it first? Oh, they weigh less. So I'd have that one. And then I would have one about dogs as sort of a counterpoint.
Yeah.
Have that active comparison going through. Well, it's yeah, cats weigh less, but you can also train dogs to not jump on people.
Yeah.
Whereas cats, you don't really think of training them, so it's not really a necessity kind of thing. So that's how I would go, would be cat, dog, cat, dog, cat, dog. Some people do all cats first and then follow up with dogs. Some people might flip it and do this is what they say about dogs and this is what they say about cats, kind of stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's what you feel comfortable writing and how easily you can transition from topic to topic.
Yeah, which is something you look at when you're working in the organization. I promise I speak. That's becoming a theme of this podcast, is I promise Elizabeth speaks English.
We're just going to smile and nod and pretend that's true.
I write English. I write English very well. That's not
I could have sworn you were going to say I write English good, and I would have lost it. You were this close to saying I write English good.
I'm already losing it today. It's Monday, guys. We record these on Mondays.
Oh, it's such a Monday.
That's why these are so all over the place.
It's such a Monday.
But yeah, so this is, It's not super always, but usually when you're writing, when you're in this brainstorming pre-writing stage, the order that you want these ideas to work will just kind of come to you from above. Or you'll figure out which one is your strongest idea, and you'll start with that one, because you can say the most about it.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to change up your outline, especially after you start writing it. I know I have reached a point where I'm like, why did I put that paragraph there? Oh my god, why didn't I put it earlier or later? I usually have that realization at least twice per paper. And I'm just like, that's dumb. Why would I do that? So don't be... Outlining is great, as is brainstorming.
But don't, get married to your outline.
Exactly. Yeah, don't be afraid of change and, reorganizing things and stuff like that. If something doesn't make sense, try it somewhere else.
Yeah. And that's something that if you bring a little bit of pre-writing or a little bit of, outlining to the writing center, that we can definitely help you with the, I don't think this really flows together all that well, or
we'll ask you stuff like, how are you going to connect this? And if you can't answer that question,
we're going to be like...
We'll fix, we'll help you.
We'll help you out. We're not just going to leave you out there hanging. How are you going to fix this connection? I don't know. Well, that's too bad.
No,
figure it out.
We are here to support you and help you with that.
Yes.
I feel like a lot of people don't bring pre-writing into the writing center. I've only had 2 people I can think of that I've helped with outlines.
One of them. But also, I had pre-writing in my bio last year.
Oh yeah,
because I really like the brainstorming pre-writing stage of ideas, because that's where you can be like, okay, cats and dogs are great, but what if I wrote a paper about dolphins?
Ooh,
and try and figure out how you can justify that. And I always think that's fun.
Yeah, definitely bring pre-writing into the writing center.
It's a nice break from working on finished papers for us,
and it's also easier to get those transition questions earlier rather than later, because I know a whole bunch of people are always asking about focus statements and transitions and stuff like that, and if you get that figured out in your outlining process, it'll make you're actually writing your paper a lot easier and flow better.
So outlining is really where you can write the content of your paper with your ideas and your supporting points, and once we talk about research, you can get your research into that outline. So then literally all you're doing when you're writing your paper is adding the and you're adding
just making complete sentences.
Yes, you're adding your articles and your conjunctions to what you've already, to these phrases and ideas you've already kind of written down. So it makes it a lot easier to actually write your paper, especially if you're on a time crunch like we always are in school.
When you suddenly remember, oh, I have a paper due in 2 days? That's fabulous. I haven't done anything.
Yeah.
We get quite a few of those, which is fine, and we'll help work you through it.
Yeah.
But yeah. So speaking of research, we just keep setting up great segues.
That wasn't such a great segue, but we'll pretend.
We're gonna pretend it's a great segue.
Okay. Good segue, team. Okay, speaking of research.
So some papers require research, some don't. It all depends. Most of the time your professor will say, I require 2 or 3 outside sources or 5 outside sources.
Or 15 outside sources for a 12-page paper.
Okay, we're not trying to scare them. We're trying to help them.
Sorry, I'm still bitter.
Anyway. So eventually you're going to need outside sources outside of the textbook that you're using or the book that you're reading or the,
article that you've read for class. My favorite outside source. No, you're going to need something other than materials your professor has, given to you. He's going to be go out into the world and search through the jungles of scholarship and find me something.
Pretty sure one of my professors has actually said that word for word.
Does not surprise me.
So they will definitely suggest you first to go to the wonderful library where the Writing Center is stationed, because gotta always plug that in the Writing Center podcast.
Subtle.
Always. So actual physical books really do help, I promise. If you don't know exactly where to start with physical books, you can come ask us in the Writing Center, or the librarians are also a really great help.
Yeah.
They tend to hide in their offices, but they are located right when you first walk into the library and go to the right. There's that really tiny, narrow, awkward staircase. librarian offices are like all up there. I think there's maybe 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah, and they all have different like jobs that do stuff. Yeah, and books are great because unlike academic articles, they have like tables of contents. That's what they have, like a table of contents and an index that will point you to directly what you're looking for. So we're not saying every time you look in a book for a research paper you have to read the whole book. It's just they've got a system built into them where you can be like, I need these 5 pages of this book, and that's it. And that's okay. You can just use those 5 pages.
You can use 1 page. You can use a paragraph. But yeah, so if so after you find a couple books, or if you don't find books, you can always turn to the magic of the internet. We recommend, well, I recommend, I actually don't know what you recommend if you use different research databases, but I always use JSTOR. It's all letters, JSTOR. I think it's .org.
I don't know.
Or if you just put in JSTOR, it'll pop up.
You can do that. You can also access it off of the library's resource database page. And probably later we'll have an episode, if we're going to talk about that, walking you through that a little bit more, maybe.
Yeah, we could definitely do that.
Yeah, but I do not necessarily like JSTOR very much, but it's more just because of the articles aren't very well scanned, so it's hard for me to read them. That happens sometimes.
Also,
there's the Modern Language Association database, which is the MLA database, which is really good if you need literary criticism on anything. Academic Search Complete is just everything, so
which is also off the library's webpage.
Off the library's webpage, that's a good one. If you're really in a bind, Google Scholar works.
I usually find great sources on Google Scholar. Everyone doesn't recommend it or says it's a last ditch effort. I usually find really good sources on there.
Google Scholar literally always gives me legal cases. I have twice in my life needed a legal case for a paper, and that was because I was in a legal studies class.
Google just thinks that's all you need now, I guess.
I'm not a lawyer, Google. I'm not. I promise. It's not even like Suits where I'm pretending.
We've devolved to TV shows again. Getting off of that before it spirals like it did last week. The top 2 I use are JSTOR and Google Scholar, but definitely look on the library's website. And basically all you have to do is go to the websites, put in a phrase or a word, the book that you're talking about, the author, whatever you need, just put it right in there. What's cool about the library's website, when you're looking for research off of there, is that you can actually narrow it down by discipline. So if you're looking for specifically, if you're writing a history paper, and you're looking for specifically, the history discipline, you can choose that from the drop-down box. Or, English literature, or the sciences, psychology, all that, you can choose specifically so you don't have other sources mixed in with what you actually need.
I think you can do that on the ones that have Galileo-based search mechanisms. Not all of them do, but the ones that have Galileo-based search mechanisms, you can narrow them down in a lot of ways. You can use only peer-reviewed articles, only full-text articles, only articles that are linked via PDF, only book reviews, stuff like that.
Always use peer-reviewed
resources. Peer-reviewed articles. That's your professors will plug this to you a lot, but use peer-reviewed articles.
And basically, it means it's exactly what it sounds like. It's just been reviewed by people who know what they're talking about. So it's like they've been fact-checked, basically.
They've been fact-checked. What's a good example of something that hasn't been fact-checked?
Wikipedia? Well, it's gotten better.
Yeah.
But generally, Wikipedia is one of those sources where it's they don't fact-check.
It's not like a tabloid article or anything that hasn't been fact-checked.
Yeah. So peer-reviewed, scholarly article will have been looked at by someone in the same field, so they can be like, yeah, this is legit, or nah, this isn't legit. But that won't be published under peer review if it's not legit, because they'll be still working on it to make it legit. Make it too legit to quit.
Okay, so I think we're gonna stop there.
What? You didn't like my hot rod reference? Someone's gonna get it.
Okay.
Someone, I hope someone gets my...
You did just say hot rod, and I'm not cutting that, so someone
should get my hot rod reference. I did the hand signals and everything, just so you know.
Okay. But yeah, that was pretty much Always with research, you do have to remember to cite your sources, but we're going to get into the details of that for different disciplines in a couple episodes later on, because seriously, I do not know how to cite anything in Chicago.
No, Chicago and APA. Someone asked me yesterday, actually, like, do you know how to cite an APA? And I was, nope, I do not.
I know a little bit. It's kind of like MLA, but weirder. Anyways, we're both English majors. We're both really comfortable with MLA and
so
not
comfortable
much
with MLA.
else.
Yeah.
But
that's all we really have to use.
Yeah. So next episode, we are going to concentrate on the dreaded thesis statement.
Woohoo!
Woo!
Everyone loves thesis statements.
Yeah. Sure.
We'll be breaking that down for you and talking through that. But yeah, so that was pre-writing. And like we said, if you have pre-writing, if you need help with outlining or brainstorming or whatever research help, please come in and see us. That's what we're here for. We're not just here for finished or drafted essays.
Yeah. We're here for every step of the writing process.
Yep.
We even made an outline for this podcast.
Yeah.
It didn't help much, but we did it.
No, it kept us on topic.
Yeah. That's it. But, yeah, so that's been the pre-writing podcast.
If you have any other questions, feel free to let us know when we can answer them next episode, or right back
tweet
to
us.
You can tweet us. Oh, we didn't mention the Twitter.
We're gonna mention it now. We have a Twitter now. Steph and I run it. It's at _C _podcast.
So follow it. We have 2 followers currently.
I think they're both us.
It's both us. Yes.
It's us, and I think the Writing Center Twitter.
The Writing Center Twitter.
Yeah.
Follow that one too.
Follow us. Tweet us stuff that you want to see in the podcast.
Want to see in the podcast? It's pretty impressive if you can see this podcast.
Stuff you want to hear about in the podcast.
There we go.
Questions you have. We might answer some of them, even if they're weird questions. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe we'll just have like a question podcast.
Yeah. Finals week. We will just answer your questions because we're too tired to function.
Our brains will be fried.
All right. But that's been the 3rd episode of the Writing Center podcast.
And you'll hear from us next week.
Yeah.
Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.